Daughter colored in a picture on a round table. Said it had to have walked over one of the bridges during the night. Into Manhattan? That's where they keep Central Park. I don't believe it. Sounds like alligators in the sewers to me. Said they're cunning little bastards, tough as a shovel, that they'll go anywhere. Did it say where they came from? Didn't say. I think they were going, dropping quickly into silence. The quiet spread, thick, cool paint on glass. I think it's over, she said. I think it is, he said. He could feel himself beginning to unclench. He wished he could remember now what the article had said, whether they had come out of the west, spreading east through the plains and the cornfields as the predators died before them, or whether they had always been there, right from the beginning, and only been squeezed into visibility by the loss of their space. He seemed to recall that both theories had their backers. It hardly mattered. Domestic or imported, they were here. I've never heard anything like that before in my life, she said, turning over on her side. They hunted like cats, he remembered now, stalking and leaping on the backs of their prey rather than running it down like wolves. He lay awake for an hour after that, listening, waiting for them to return, trying to understand what had happened to him. In the first few moments, as he'd plunged from sleep like a swimmer rushing from the water, he'd distinctly imagined a giant muzzle crashing through the roof of the cabin, snuffing and snatching at flesh as though they were voles in a burrow. The madness of that image, so uncharacteristic of him, troubled him now. He had never been particularly bothered by the ferocity of nature before, had always known and accepted the fact that the border between life and death was a porous thing, the two sides bleeding into each other everywhere and always. And yet, though he understood all this and more, having served in France at a time when the borders had been fixed and hard and the bleeding pretty much all one way, there was something else going on here. Sometimes, lately, he'd wake up in the middle of the night and lean over her to see if she was breathing. Twice in the last year, unable to hear anything, he'd shaken her awake, fighting off the panic tightening his chest and rising into his throat like glue. "What's wrong? What is it?" She'd cried out both times, bolting up into the dark, and both times he'd had to invent some absurd story. Once that he'd had a nightmare, the other, more shamefully, that he had no idea what she was talking about, that she was the one who had woken him. What is it?" He'd begun yelling the instant she sprang awake, making a big show of being disoriented and confused. When she asked him what this was all about, and whether he had finally lost his mind waking her up in the middle of the night, he'd allowed himself to get angry. "Why the hell would I want to wake you?" he'd demanded, and spent the next few minutes arguing so convincingly, so self-righteously, that by the time he'd rolled over on his other side, he half believed that it was she who had woken him, and resented her for it. At night, he would lie looking up into the cedar planks or out through the open windows into the dark, weighing his life, adding a little dust here, a little there, shaking it in his palm, then raining it out like salt. The scales tipped and creaked. Arthur Prochaska had been a journalist with the Hartford Courant for 59 years. He'd think about that sometimes. He'd started there when he was 16, 2 years after Armistice, less than 3 after his father died. A tough, ringwormy-looking kid in borrowed shoes who did whatever was asked of him. The old guys, who didn't like anybody, had taken a shine to him right off. It had all been an accident, the way it had turned out. A noisy argument had broken out around O'Connor's desk, where the boys had gathered, as usual, to shoot the shit and pass judgment on whoever seemed in need of it. God, how he'd loved the place. "Hell, any kid off the street could tell you that," he heard someone say as he walked into the mailroom. "Hey, you," O'Connor had called out to him. "Yeah, you. What's your name?" Arthur told him. O'Connor waved it away. "Jesus, all right, get over here. You can read, right?" He snapped a sheet of paper at him. "Read this." And 17-year-old Artie Prochaska, who hadn't even gotten laid yet, though he'd thought about it a good deal.